I'm Sharon Brett Kelly and I'm standing outside the Pakuranga Medical Centre in southeast Auckland, and it's a rainy old Tuesday afternoon. Doesn't seem that busy. The reason I'm here is because today's podcast is about pharmacies. Everywhere you turn, when you're in any kind of shopping centre, whether it's small town New Zealand or somewhere in Auckland, there's either a bargain chemist or a chemist warehouse. Now that's great for customers because we're going to these places for cheap prices, but what does it mean for those kind of old-fashioned pharmacies, the community pharmacies? They say they are really struggling at the moment. It's partly because of the competition, but it's also the way they are funded and it's the way prescriptions are being dealt with. So I'm going into the Unichem pharmacy here to meet the pharmacist and owner, Vicky Chan. As we move to a room at the back of the shop, Vicky greets a couple of regular customers.
Susan, hello, hi.
And that's something she says sets her apart from the discount chains, the vital connection with patients that these 1,000-odd owner-operator independent pharmacies all over the country offer. Wow, you really do know what's going on. You're like a hairdresser. They always know what's going on too, don't they?
They do come in, because I think, well, we know them very well,
What I noticed out here, one, is that a woman came in who speaks Chinese and you've got a staff member who could speak to her fluently. That's really important. And clearly this is an area that does have a high Chinese population, would you say?
It does, but it has actually changed quite a bit in the last few years. We are actually serving quite a diverse community these days. I would say over 80%, 85%, there are a lot of regular customers, and they're still amazed sometimes that they walk through the door like we know, like it's like, okay, well, that's Mrs. Smith, our repeat is ready. There aren't a lot of service providers or even businesses that have those relationship anymore these days. So, and that's something like we work very hard to preserve.
But what I'm hearing is that community pharmacies are in trouble.
In East Auckland, we have seen another local pharmacies close 3 months ago, and there will be another one closing end of the month. So, but if you look at the number of pharmacies, closures, I think we are almost 100 community pharmacies down from 2020.
Why is that?
I think there are a lot of workforce pressures. Maybe smaller operators, they're finding it harder to recruit and retain. I think there's the burnout, after COVID response. So we did see a lot of people leave the profession. Our funding hasn't quite kept up, with cost pressure. So it is harder to be able to pay my pharmacists better, even though I know they're doing an amazing job, but the funding hasn't been, I guess, recalibrated in a way that it fits the model that we're running now.
Tell me about the funding. I mean, how does it work? Do you get paid per
dispensing? Yeah.
Dispensing. So how much do you get?
Less than a cup of coffee, if, that's $6 mark.
Because the patient or the client, customer, pays $5 per prescription.
And I have to say, which is great in terms of, I think patients being able to access medicine. But I think, my hesitations is always come back down to sometimes the unseen clinical work that we do.
The thing is that from February the 1st, this new policy of the 12 months prescription. So does that mean that you would only get paid for that one?
So the financial impact from the 12-month prescriptions actually have been managed. So to break it down, even though we say, hey, some patients may meet the criteria for safe 12 months prescriptions, they can still collect 3 months, say maximum, at a time, and then they will come back each 3-month cycle or monthly cycles, depending on how it's written or the type of medications, and then will be paid those initial dispensing and 2 repeats dispensing every 3-month cycle.
So I think you're not hit by that. You financially, you're not any worse off.
No, we are not. But I guess there will be more clinical responsibilities to make sure their health circumstances haven't changed. And that's almost on us, community pharmacists.
Because they're not going to the doctor.
Yep.
Should we have a little look behind the counter?
Yeah, let's do.
Thank you.
I'm excited to show you.
We'll hear more from the head of the Independent Community Pharmacies Association shortly about how this funding model works. But now Vicky's showing me what goes on behind that high counter. A counter with a couple of computer
We've got double screens. This is our interactions, New Zealand drug formulary as well. So that helps us with dosage, to reference, hey, this dosage looks a bit weird. Yeah.
GP might have made a mistake with
Yeah, potentially. So we often get calls from our prescribers. This patient is allergic to this, or I've got a celiac patient, has this drug got anything that they may react to. Okay. So it's a lot of collaborations,
And then behind us are shelves,
drugs. Antibiotics, drugs.
And then over here, you've got your paper bags. These are the ones that you've already dispensed.
And quite often you may find we have put notes or comments, and that's for our team to go out and counsel. So we do a little project here. It's our own project. So we're going into another area where we do medical pack compliance pack. Usually elderly patients or patients that are on really complex drug regime. So we pack them into bubble pack where it makes them easier to comply, or for the caregiver to dish it out easily. So they don't have to open a bottle or blister out a tablet.
That's labour intensive?
Yep, we are investing obviously in a robots in the new year as well that will help us doing that. So, but for us to say if we want to invest in a better robot, that's another 100K that I'm going to commit ourselves into in this economic climate.
Thank you so much. There's no way this pharmacy can compete with the big chains on product range and prices. But Vicky warns when the community pharmacies are gone, they're gone for good.
I think there are a lot of work that we do that are invisible, that have helped reduce pressures from GP, but also reduce ED admissions because we were able to pick those things up early because we have that relationship with our patients.
You don't get paid for that, do you? I mean, if somebody walks in and says, I've got an ear infection, I think I've got an ear infection, what shall I do?
Yep, you're right. A lot of our interventions are invisible and unfunded.
Some people would say, well, that's great. What a great service. But I could go to, say, Chemist Warehouse or Bargain Chemist and get my prescription, ask that pharmacist, I've got something wrong with me, ask them what they would prescribe. And also at the same time I might be able to get a beauty product or shampoo cheaply, and that's what you can't offer. But it does make me wonder, how are you going to survive?
If you look at the range of clinical services that we provide here at Unichem Pakuranga, we are a walk-in immunizations hub. The type of prescribing that we do, we run a sleep clinic that we look after over 50 sleep apnea patients. Those are investments and dedications that we've decided as a team. Some of these patients' relationships are 3 generations deep. It is hard work. I won't deny that. But I think it's quite emotional talking about it because it's quite humbling. Yeah.
So what do the pharmacists want? Well, it's a lot more complicated than you'd think. For a start, there are different rules for different parts of the country. Let's first look at the National Pharmacy Agreement with Clive Cannons. He's had his own pharmacy in Wainuiomata for 40 years and heads the community pharmacy group.
There's 2 parts to owning a pharmacy. You have to be applied to Medicines Control, which is a division of the Ministry of Health, for a license, which means they will come and look at your premises, look at your systems, make sure that you're doing everything right, and then they'll give you a license to open a pharmacy. So that's part 1. And then part 2 is you apply to Health New Zealand for a contract which is that you will get paid for what you do, which is the National Pharmacy Agreement. The agreement has two parts to it. It has the part that everyone gets, which is how much we get paid for a dispensing, how much we get paid for a vaccination, how much we get paid for making up an ointment, etc., etc. All the little components of dispensing are in that document. And then the second part is the individualized part, where you can negotiate with your local planning and funding person to provide extra services outside of the main dispensing agreement. And then you set that up yourself, but that's not the national part. So so the license is the license to open, and the agreement is the ability to get paid for what we do.
So do all the pharmacies in that region, if they pass the test, are they all entitled to some kind of agreement?
They're not. And it depends which region you're in. This is part of the problem. So in our region, which is the Hutt Valley, which was the whole Hutt Valley DHB, you can get your license from the Ministry of Health, but then you have to apply for the agreement, and you can only get the agreement if the planning and funding people consider there's a need for another pharmacy in the area. And there was a case, I'm not sure if it was just before or just after COVID, where a pharmacy opened. They had their license, but they couldn't get an agreement, so they were doing non-subsidised dispensing.
Oh.
So if you went in there, you had to pay the full price. So it's very sad to say, but that pharmacy closed down.
Right.
Because it can't be a going concern. So technically you can open a pharmacy without an agreement, but
you won't get those subsidies.
You won't get subsidised. So you would have to pay the full cost of any medicine you get there.
So no one would go there because surely
that's right.
The customer would also have to pay that. So does that mean, is there a kind of a cap on the number of pharmacies that have an agreement?
Not an official cap. I know that in the Hutt Valley, they have turned down quite a few applications for funding agreements, whereas up in your area, Bay of Plenty, Waikato, Auckland and Northland, if you apply, you'll get an agreement.
And is that based on what, population size or?
No, that's just their policy. They'll just give you an agreement, whereas the policy in our region is you have to prove that local needs not being met to get an agreement. We have talked to Health New Zealand about this problem of national consistency, and they are starting a working group this year to look at that very issue of having a consistent policy around allocating agreements or awarding agreements.
Why does that matter, to have a national policy?
Because it gives people certainty when they're opening a business, which is important if you're a young owner, or even for the corporates. We only have a very limited number of corporates in the Hutt Valley because our local planning and funding people prefer independent pharmacies. You know, as I was saying to you the other day, like Pukekohe is oversupplied. So what we need to find is a halfway point. In Australia, you can't open a pharmacy within so many kilometres of another pharmacy.
In Auckland, in my experience, you can walk around the corner and there's another pharmacy. That's what it's like for Vicky, isn't it? She's got a bargain chemist a 5-minute walk away, and then a chemist warehouse not too far away as well. And then, of course, there would be whatever pharmacies there are over at Sylvia Park, which isn't that far from her either.
That's why we want some consistency around this. I know for sure that a lot of the pharmacies in Auckland are hardly breaking even because there's just too many. And that's not fair on young people who buy into a business, put their house on the line. You know, you don't start a business to fail. You start a business because you believe in what you do. And so I think it's disingenuous of what was the DHB to give these licenses when the pharmacy's hardly going to make a go of it.
It feels like things are really going the other way, a bit more of a free-for-all, really, you know, especially with the likes of Chemist Warehouse growing and plans to open more. It does feel like New Zealand's going in the opposite direction.
Yes. You know, like in Wellington, we only have 3 Chemist Warehouse in the whole region. From Masterton down, there's only 3, which is unusual. Pharmacy services in New Zealand, the choice is, it's not what's best for business, it's what's best for the health of our communities. And yes, corporate pharmacies have a place, but they shouldn't have the only place. There has to be room for the high service model, which is what most independent pharmacies are striving to achieve.
What are you fighting for at the moment? Because, the message I got is that the independent pharmacies are really struggling. And then on February the 1st, you've got more changes, the 12-month prescription rule and this enabling of pharmacists to become prescribers. Are you fighting that as well as, the march of discount chemist warehouses?
Well, yes. Number one, it's the survival of the independent pharmacists around the country. And even within that cohort, there are people that provide exceptional service and there are people that don't. I'm not trying to make a generalisation that all independent pharmacies are perfect. However, I believe there's a need for that high service model where the owner knows their community, is the community pharmacist in your local town. We've lost our local GPs. We've lost those things that hold communities together, and the last bastion is the local pharmacy. I'm not trying to hold back progress, but I am fighting for the sustainability of that side of our industry, which means primarily the sustainable funding from Health New Zealand is really, really important. Making sure that the proliferation of new pharmacies is measured and planned. We're fighting the deregulation, and we're also doing positive things, which is trying to promote good workforce, good service levels. We're also supporting our pharmacists in developing their businesses and all that sort of thing. So we're not just fighting, we're also trying to strengthen as well.
When you say industry deregulation, what do you mean by that?
So the government has signalled that they want to take away the effective control rules where pharmacies have to be owned by pharmacists and controlled by pharmacists, and make it that anyone can own a pharmacy. And I just don't believe that will be in the best interests of our communities at all.
Is that what we're sort of seeing with the supermarkets in terms of having a pharmacy inside the actual store?
That's exactly what we're seeing.
Except that you took Countdown, as it was known at the time, to the High Court and won that ruling, didn't you, at the time?
Yes, we did.
But the government, what is it, despite that, it's going ahead with a deregulation?
Well, yeah, I mean, the risk of that court action was always going to be that we won in court and lost in legislation. So at this point, it's still being worked through the process, the parliamentary process. It's a long way away from becoming law. You
mean the deregulation proposal?
The deregulation, yeah. The question is, what do the people of New Zealand want? What sort of pharmacy industry does the man on the street want? If they want us to go to like America, then that's exactly what's going to happen. For instance, this morning we had a gentleman come into the pharmacy. He'd had a burn and we dressed it, cleaned it, dressed it. And I know that this guy doesn't have any money. So I said, look, don't worry, it's on the house. And I feel you would lose that capacity to do those sort of things, which not only are they kind, they stop clogging up the GP or him having to go to after hours and wait who knows how long to be seen.
So you're doing it for love, Clive?
We're doing it for love.
You must be pretty worried, though, because...
I'm very worried. I'm just on 60. I've been in this community for 40 years doing this job, and I just love everyone here. And I just want to make sure that I do the best for everybody. And I'm coming up to the end of my career, but I'm really worried about young pharmacists coming through as to what sort of industry they're entering. We are highly skilled health professionals. There's no doubt about it. And more we've been asked to do more services, increase our scope, get better qualified, which is fantastic. But the environment in which we practice is in danger of disappearing forever, and a new environment would take its place. And I just don't think you would get that ability to provide that one-on-one care for our patients that we are very privileged to provide now. And that's what I don't want to see disappear, and I'll fight forever for it because I think it's important.
You know, the trouble is when you say to somebody, oh, I'm doing a story about pharmacies and bring up Chemist Warehouse, and people go, oh, yeah, I know what you mean, but you can't help but go to the Chemist Warehouse because you can get a cheap bottle of shampoo, or you cannot compete against that. You can't stop people.
Of course I've been in the Chemist Warehouse and had a look. Why wouldn't I? And done price comparisons, and for what they're selling their stock for, I can't even buy it for that. So we're not trying to compete on price. We have what we have. We sell what we sell. But with that, we try and provide really, really good service and high level of service. Here at the pharmacy, I'm very big on values, and to make it successful, the thing that I'm interested in, and I tell my staff every morning, is all we have to do is be interested in our patients, solve their problems, and make them feel special. So we're not about price. That's what we are all about. That's what I'm fighting for, the ability to keep doing that every single day.
Can a community pharmacy be profitable just by doing prescriptions and selling straight medicines over the counter without going into lipsticks and all that kind of thing?
We can. And I'm actually in the middle of re-engineering our business along those lines. And we've reduced our cosmetics, we've reduced our beauty, we've reduced our gift lines, and I'll keep reducing them because our core business is health. And it is a legacy that we sell all those other things from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Yes, you can be profitable if you stick to medicine and health. That's part of what our group is trying to do. Is not only do you have to just sell them, you have to be clever, and you have to be adding on the services, like vaccinations, in our case, rheumatic fever clinics, all those other things that we do have to be added on to make it work.
Yeah, because that means that you get some kind of funding for the government to offer that service. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
That's it for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and NZ On Air. This podcast was produced by Gwen McClure and engineered by William Saunders. Thanks to Clive Cannons and Vicky Chan. I'm Sharon Brett Kelly. Mā te wā.